Okay, it's time to play our built-in game show here on the channel again, called Where Are We At? We're going to see some pictures here. It's the mode of the game, where I show you some pictures of some artifacts or something, or a place, so on, things that are discernible, and then you guess where we're at. Down in the comments below. Now, this is not the only picture I'm going to show you, of course, but you can at any time put down a comment there. I'm going to ask you later to, if you haven't already, go ahead and do so. But where are we at? You can see some farmland that's down here, and then you see some circles that are in it. Those are actually large mounds of land, commonly known as kurgans. Where are we at? Those little dots that you see that are making up the area that covers that farmland there and make it look green when it's really tan are actually trees. Some of these mounds are huge, and here we can see, looking at this picture alone, they're, pardon the hand of God or finger of God here, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and a little one next to it, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of these mounds shown in this one little valley. Our area, where are we at? You might be able to tell the blemishes in the ground, like a big circle that's here, that apparently there might have been one bigger than all of these that's now just flattened all out and gone and erased from time. Or these two other circles that are like here, that might look like something might have been there once before. Let's move to the next picture before we make any assumptions, though. So another name for this is tumulus. This is within picture taking shot of the last shot, except for this one is more than 4 times larger than any one that was in that shot before. In fact, this is the second largest burial mound or kurgan found in the world today, to date. Where are we at? If you look closely here, pardon the finger of God, you can see around the rim this perfectly cut portioned line that goes around it, and there's also vents that are cut into that. Kind of conspicuous. You might also notice that there are some holes here at the top that are done for trying to excavate down into it, and here there's a hole done in an excavation where people have gone to a point and dug it out and then decided to go in. And you can tell that weathering has happened on here, and there are quite a few holes gone through here and tried to penetrate into the center of the mound. But that also is the effect in here. So a lot of these have been looted in ancient times. Where are we at? Where in the world is Carmen Sandiego? I see down in the comments people making comments about where this could be. From the hills of Ireland and stuff, or Scotland, or over in that area in Denmark or so. But wait, here's another person talking about Proto-Indo-Europeans and way over in Asia, way in East Asia. Kind of strange. Where are we at? that tumulus that's there, it's shown on the left in comparison to these four that are shown on the right here, and this one that's down below it that's been bisected and only 1/4 of it or less remains just below it, is not the same one that we were looking at a minute ago. For the one we were looking at a minute ago is almost twice the size of the one we're seeing now on the left hand side. In fact, if you look at that ring that goes around it, like the road and everything goes around, that's about the size of the other one that we were looking at. There's a small one out in this grove that's here too, but there are three that are lined up here, but they're off just a hair. It's like the third one's off just a bit. That's conspicuous of Orion and other conjugations that go with astronomy. Where do you think we're at? Fear not of being wrong. The point of this is that you're supposed to be somewhat wrong. I've only done one of these out of the many that I've done that I felt was really tongue-in-cheek and wasn't something that, even though you know about archaeology a lot, might get wrong. Fear not. I noticed something now with this overhead shot, with the way that the land gets a little greener, a little tanner, certain things will show up, and I don't know if it shows up in this shot here, but down here at the very bottom, there's a squared off looking building that's there, and a couple of other shapes that look like there might be something there from elder times. I don't know, it might be a building from a couple of 100 years ago, but it could be from way back. Some of these date from 1400 to 1800 BC in this area, but they haven't looked at quite a few. They've only looked at a few. And in fact, there's well over 100 just going down through this stretch that you could go in a 20-minute, 30-minute car ride going down this road. Well, I'm wrong there. If it was to connect the dots like old connect the dot games and zigzag, but you can tell the road here has just been put especially right through it. They got up to a point and then carved right over through and even touched the edge of that mound. It's there. Where are we at, guys? I'll go for another picture or two. You can see the land's surely greening up this time of year. They've got some fresh plowed fields going on there, and whatever's there is sprouting up. This is a shot just down from where we were there. Pardon my hand for another count and some showings of things, but here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I feel like I missed one there because I looked at my hand to see where I was pointing at. There's also an area in this brown right here that looks like a perfect circle, but there's no mound there. Might be representative of a mound being there, or an ancient circle, an ancient ditch circle, all kinds of things it could be. Where are we at? Strangely, whenever I get this shot here, I get an idea of Göbekli Tepe somehow in my mind, where it's an open savanna, and then somebody has planted the stuff all on top of it. Some of these are covered up, other ones they're purposely going just right around. And again, you can see the string of them in the distance. I don't have to use my finger. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then there's smoke. Don't know what they're doing right there. Maybe doing a crop burning or something like that. Then over at the left, in the distance over here, you can see a few more. I don't know if every tan thing that you see is one in the distance, but This thing sure is right here. Where are we at? Gives you a bunch of different ideas. Indeed, maybe the first picture had you set off in Ireland and all kinds of things, but the more arid that we get to looking at it, the more we start to think of steps, and the more we look at shots like this, the more I think of Göbekli Tepe. But where do you think we're at? Put it down in the comments. See, the name Tepe goes with this, but there's not just one, and which one's named what, so on like that. Well, there's a whole lot of them. In fact, what we're finding is there's one right here, but if you'll look in the foreground, there's a hole that's going down there, and in fact, that was a smaller one where we're standing right here in the picture that has all been taken down long ago. And you can see that this little slab here is about the size of a pickup bed, or even wider than a pickup bed by a foot or two, or a foot hanging off on either side. No telling how long it is, but after going in and looking at pictures, a lot of these, it's probably 4 or 5 foot wide. So in the longest trailer bed, you might be able to take that rock and put it in there. But due to the tonnage that was on there, and unless you've got some duly countrified truck with some freaky suspension on it, you might be able to carry the thing, but your truck will never be the same again. And it's not that there's one that's right there that's put up on top of these T-pillar types. It's quite a few of them here. There's some stretches that go on for hundreds of feet. We'll look at a picture here in a moment that'll show you that effect. Where are we at? Here's a close-up of these trees, which in this case look like olive trees or some type of fruit tree at least. And here's a downward shot of one that's going right by that road, just barely there. You can tell it's been gouged into right here a long time ago and penetrated and things. So most of these have been penetrated long ago. A lot of them have been flattened. They say they found 146 of them through this valley area here that doesn't stretch too much of a distance. In this shot right here, we see the foreground one, but then behind it, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, what? And then it goes off to mist, which I bet if you were standing on top of one of these kurgans, you could see a whole lot more. And we're only looking in one direction and not back the other way in the valley either. Where are we at? These are known as tumuluses or kurgans. Isaac is attached to it, like Isaac out of the Bible, but spelled differently. But a lot of people have made that connection. In fact, I've made a video about it not too long ago. But that's not necessarily where these come from, or even where we're at. One last time, where we're at. Here's another shot that makes me think that we're not too far from Göbekli Tepe. Are we somehow above that or below that or something? Because it just got that feel, doesn't it? Well, this is actually just an aerial shot going back through there. And if you look in the distance, here's that smoke that was there. And before we were looking at it from over here, way than the plane or probe thing was shooting a shot back across this way. The drone. Guessing where we're at might be harder than actually guessing how many trees there are in this picture. Getting it right. If you were to say 1,000, you would be cutting it way, way short of just the ones that are in the foreground here. If we were to somehow chop off the picture like that and like that, we're still looking at, oh my gosh. But this place is hooked up with the word 1,000. These are called the Ben Tepe Kurgans. And Ben Tepe means 1,000 hills, or 1,000 tepe, like Göbekli Tepe, the little pregnant little bump that was sticking up there. Well, luckily with Göbekli Tepe, it was a pregnant potbelly hill and had to do with something that was going to birth a whole new idea to us, for she was pregnant or potbellied. Or we could put the name pimple on these things, or all kinds of boil. We could put all kinds of names on these things and what you could get out of them, but it's amazing what we find in them. Ben Tepe Kurgans are actually found in Anatolia. And so this site here is kind of telling. You can see that people have made some excavations to try to get down in it, and there's people out here in a car, and this is where you normally park at now, and you walk up here zigzagging by the places that people have already excavated in, zigzagging up close to the top by a bunch of places where people have already dug it out to try to get up at the top and get a checkout idea of what's going on. And the amount, the millions of tons of earth that are attached to a lot of these larger ones, or even a small one. For what they really did, and we'll show you a little bit later, is they took a house, just like their house, and built them a nice one right inside of this thing, and buried them in it. And because they find them at not sea level, if you will, of the level like the people in the cars out here or the road are, but somewhat up of it, they've always said that they built them on a little mound, but I think if we dug in that mound, we might find that that's kind of a tepe from ancient times that they built that on. But then all of this is man-made. None of these were hills before men and women started taking basket after basket after basket after basket after basket of soil from places near there, flattening out the land there, but in the process building up a mountain in this area here. You know, I played Dungeons and Dragons, used to whenever I was a kid, haven't played in eons really, but have still got that in me from younger and so on. And I still play a video game which is kind of reminiscent of it. It's definitely a homage to that situation, but this is one of those things where you would try to dig into one of these mounds. Well, you would find somebody's secret entrance somehow, and you got in, and there would be traps, very much like Indiana Jones and so on. But then if you could find the secret, and a lot of these things would be ransacked a little bit, but then you'd find the dead party that was there, and then after that you'd start finding some stuff they didn't find. Sometimes there was trick passages and so on, and you'd eventually have to do intelligence checks and silly stuff like that with dungeon masters trying to find things. Hopefully it's done right and it kind of just plays out. But, you know, like some kind of Scooby-Doo type thing. But the passages in some of these are incredibly long. Some of them, just the passage going in it is more than a football field and a half to get to the very center of it, to where the house that the person lives in. And also in that D&D campaign, now I think of the Hall of the Mountain King and Crom of Conan and his great mountain that he lives in. And this concept of these man-made mountains, which is just what a pyramid is. Stone will last longer than soil, and all of these have eroded to a point. They used to have a whole lot more soil on them than they do now. You can tell the excavations and the side pullings, and like here, it looks like Mount St. Helens, and it erupted the volcano and burped out this side of it. But no, people took all that soil, whereas it's all around you here in these farmlands with all these trees and stuff that's being built now. But they're all over the place. But as you're looking, they're all broken into that we can find at this point. Here's looking at one that was excavated, and if you want to go Indiana Jones idea, this was excavated to a point where they realized it's so deep, and after trying to get all the dirt out of it and so on, that they actually use mining carts in it. So you want to talk about a runaway mine cart idea, and you'd think you would only be going in 50, 100 yards and running into it. But in the little D&D idea, it would become a runaway mine cart that would take you way over. And whenever you finally came out, you would actually come out of a different tumulus or something different, or ruins, or who knows what. But here they've shored up where somebody dug into the tumulus, but this is not the normal way that they set up for them. Here's an old picture of one of the tumuluses with a shepherd and having his flock and so on, some rocks near it and so on. But we look at this here, it still looks like we're in the steppes somehow and so on. There's even been people that have built houses into the side of these things, which is real efficient and keeps it cooled off in the summer and so on, as we see here. A lot of houses were built that way. There's a few here in town, one's real famous. It's like built into a little hill that looks like it was basically built into a tumulus. So just the way they set it up, though. It's supposed to be super efficient, but again, you can tell that all or most of these mounds were plundered in ancient times. In fact, there's trails leading in and out of this thing like crazy, and this mound, and that thing had been poked at from all different sides, surrounded by trees again. But so when you go to look at these things, a lot of them, this is what you'll find. And in fact, if it's any point past this, it just turns into a dirt mound. Tons and tons of this has already been taken away for other reasons. Couldn't really tell it there, but on the left at the very top there was one. And now again we're standing in a position where one was, and there used to be a mountain above our heads right now, and inside of that was this little tumulus or little Kurgan burial in the center, and the hearth of it that's left here, and the lead into it facing to the east. But this is almost like a little Fred Flintstone house, and this doesn't have too much difference from the dolmens and things that we looked at. In fact, the very first form of Kurgans that we find, or the oldest form of them we find, are through the Caucasus Mountains, and that has connections to that and Noah and all these types of things. And spreading civilization out of these people. In fact, there's a hypothesis called the Kurgan hypothesis that goes directly with these people that were doing this. Look at these two slabs that are right here up on top of it here, 1 and 2, and you could take that right there and take one of the biggest long bed dualies trucks that you've got today and stick that thing in it. And you might be able to cruise around with it, but that truck will never be the same. I think it's like 24 tons. If that's this picture or the other one that was showing closer, that they estimated that one of the rocks that started the top of it off was. But there's not just one. It goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they're in. Where are they? Well, they're still underground or not there anymore, and all that's left is this little end part that's here. Looks a little reminiscent of ones that you do find over in Ireland and the UK and stuff. Yeah, this is the one right here. The one on the left, 24 tons. So, seeing the step version that looks like this, it gets you all up in Proto-Indo-European lands, and it takes you away from Ireland, and it just doesn't look as green. Some of these places are covered with vegetation, and you just see this little hole that somebody popped in there. Some of those holes are actually caves like this. In fact, they take that cave and to make sure it's good, and if it's not in solidness and so on, they shore it up as we just showed you earlier. And this is not the original entrance or the way that was in there that was covered up long ago. In fact, they covered that up long ago. And here we go again with this trestle and runaway mine train there hooked up into it. There's mounds like crazy. Here we can see two off to the left in the distance. The one that the man's at right now here, and there's one, there's one, there's one. Makes you wonder just how many mounds, and you know, what's over that little hill there? I said in a recent video off of it. Well, you know, no. What's in that little hill right there? What's up with that little hill that's there? You know, they're the it right now. Something that in archaeology was discarded for generations, really, as being something that must be newer, some new concept. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In the distance, there's a huge one, but you can barely see it in the mist. So a lot of these were just dismissed. Here's one in the foreground. I don't know if you can make it out, but that's the center hearth of one that used to be here that would have been a huge mountain that was here at one time, and now it's just flattened out. And if you look around, you never knew what you never knew, but I'll bet there are 3 or 4 more that are not here anymore. Again, they said there was 146 of them, but there's only 111 of them that have a mound effect anymore. So they have found ones like this that they knew were a mound before, 30-something of them, and end up being at that, arriving at that number. Some of which, just like a lot of the archaeological sites, never get identified though until it rains and does something and vegetation starts to grow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in a row. 1, 2, 3. And I wonder if we were to plot these out, if it would actually come out to mean anything with the valley and have to do anything with lining up or to do so. But this is again called the Ben Tepe Kurgans. It's 1,000 hills, you know, like you hear 1,000 island dressing. And you can imagine why, because whenever you go through this valley area here on this road, you're going to see, well, you're going to see 50, 60 of them from the road that's there, and in the distance there are quite a few more that lead down through, and modern day power lines are now cutting around and down through them. Crops are grown around them and so on. But each one of these held a great man, a great person. It wasn't just, this isn't a burial ground for just normal people. They would have been buried like the trees are out there nowadays. For the same reason a pyramid's built and other mounds like this are built, is for that same reason, that it's an idea of a primordial womb. This idea, this great hall of the mountain king I was referring to earlier, but it's a sign of rebirth. And it's also a sign that there was a person great enough at one time that all the people thought well enough that they spent all their extra time getting these buckets of dirt, and not from right around it. There's not just some ditch or hole around here. No, 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 no. To make sure they carried them a long distance. Carry a 5-gallon bucket of dirt sometime. It'll give you an idea. And then know that these people did it for a year or more after this guy died, making this every day. There was a guy that was that great. You'd love to hear the stories behind what this guy did and everything through his life and his kids or so on, but we don't have any of it nowadays. Who knows? Maybe that hill over there is one of his kids there, and there's his other there. Both of them did great things. That was his son. We'll never know. If we ever excavate them out a little better, we might find some bones and so on, but it looks like long ago they've been ransacked. But there are a few pictures that show some of the stuff that's in here that you can still find in these. And here's one with a fine cut stone and one of those multi-ton lids and rocks that are all built into it. And you can find they're not super polished stone, but well cut stones that are used in this whenever they do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I swear we were looking at this picture earlier. I'm certain of it now. And this one too. This is the one that was gouged into and so on. But there used to be one in the top left hand corner too, and it's gone now. Here's a passageway of the internal mounds on the map and how it ran through. So this guy had a house that was built into this, and his little streets that were going on and all this other things. And that's all they can find. But I'll tell you some D&D secret type thing too. Just going along this passage right here, there's a few stones on the right side that you may or may not figure out are there, but they're not meeting the surface of the top. They're not touching the ceiling like all the ones that came before it. Do you notice something? Well, if you do, and you go through the trouble of digging those out of there, and it doesn't all fall down on top of you, which it shouldn't because they're not holding it up, as you see, there's a whole room behind that. Something special. There might be a few of those in here. In fact, this looks very much like one of my D&D maps from ancient days back in or whatever. And this is something somebody gave you, and this is just the partial map and so on. It's not that it was inside of the Kurgan, because this is the way it goes, but this is level 1. But then it goes down to level 2 and then has a thing looking like this below it and below it. And in fact, in this room right here, there's a well, like a dumbwaiter. It looks like a well, but it's a dumbwaiter, and you can go down it and go to each one of the levels. There's one more way that you can get down to the other levels too. But that's just in this D&D thing, not that's in there, but you can see how that spawns out of the concepts. I wish it would quit resetting on here. These pictures were compiled by Vlad 9VT. It's a Russian guy that gets into a lot of this and compiles pictures sometimes, and during my research and times off, he puts out stuff every couple of days. And why he's got it written out on the side, because he has to interpret, because he speaks in some Czech linguist. He has put together quite a few pictures. I've used him a couple of times for a series of pictures just to show. And here's another good one to show too. You can tell it's been gouged up here at the top in ancient times, but they found enough inside of it in the gallery to where they built this building around it, and this lead-in thing that was here. And this is something, visitor center, people can go in and check this out. But there are other ones that just don't look like it, like this little bump here. But what about that huge bump on the left? Because of a couple of trees might go inconspicuous. Oh my gosh. Hate to keep stopping this all the time, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. There's at least 13 here, and it looks like there might have been a little bitty one up over here before, but look at the size of that guy. Amazing. So this is up in Anatolia, okay? And here's two, smaller and larger. We've got a vineyard going around it. So they're kept in that way, and I think we're lucky. Here's another shot of that same thing before, and again, highway runs right through them. This is just a potato camera shot of what they found in one once they finally got into it. Here in a moment they show some pictures of the walls and stuff once they took everything and swept it out. I'd like to see all of this stuff, but right here's a whole bunch of bronze item and dishes and so on that are all hooked up to it. A whole household of items that are all nice and well made. Bunch of things that they needed. This is what one would have had with it when they were unlooted. And in fact, they're inside of a house type of idea that's been built here. Whether it's a little stone dolmen house with these little tunnels running off of it, in some ways and sometimes it's actually a house. Built out of wood, log cabin if you will. Strangely associated with this quite often, other than the orchards there in a modern day, the areas that are left alone, these have had certain plants put on them to grow. And that always reminds me of Lord of the Rings and the idea of where this white flower is and how this grows. And then that made me think of where the red fern grows, and the story about a dog whenever they were a kid, and people do this. And so this is one symbol of burial and so on that goes along with it, that you know that somebody did something or planted a tree for somebody that has a symbology that goes along with it. Some of these things go in the Wayback Machine. In fact, what we're looking at here is a field of poppies. Much like in The Wizard of Oz, whenever they come out and they fall asleep. If you remember, the poppies, and if you know enough about poppies, you could probably realize the association with that. And from what we've talked about here in the last 2 years, all associations going with that, sacred rituals, all these anointing type situations, death, burial rites, and the afterlife too. So it makes sense that they're covered in poppies and little purple flowers. This right here is a chair. It's made to look like a candelabra set up with the wood that's on top of it, and you've seen these chairs from other cultures that are associated with this that I've shown before, and the way they do these ends and run a rod through the whole thing and set out these chairs that in other situations have spanned leather across them and are very much like lawn chairs and stuff that we use today. But here's just a stool or a seat. Here's one of the excavation tunnels here that's running in, and this is where somebody ran in. This is not the original thing, and eventually they hope to run into that network, and when they run into the network, zoom, 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 they get to go everywhere and check it all out. It's not going to delay now, is it? Hopefully it'll reload as it does this. So anyhow, that's where we are, is Ben Tepe. And I'm about to show you where that's at here before we run out of time. I try to keep all these under 45 minutes. But you can see this land that's here, and it's just pocked with them all over it, amazingly. See if I can just get past this point here. It's just sticking there. So you can see highways running through it at those points, but there's a giant stone ceiling right there again that's shown in these. And if you could take a look, if we could get a view on it, as you go in. There are huge stones on the side of them. Look at those row that's there and that giant one that's there. So there are huge rows that are on the side of them, but then again, look at the stones that are up on top of this. And it's going to lock up at the end of this, guys. So huge stone blocks, but here's that thing where you could say, hey, see all these blocks here? They came out of that hole that's there, and what is that? Well, they didn't actually reach the ceiling, and there's a secret room in there. Then again, that could be where they came in from and ran into the wall whenever they dug their little tunnel in, and then boom, they dug into the wall, came into here, and then wow, look, there's a labyrinth here, like a dungeon. Ooh, what can we find? Hence the idea of D&D, you know, I guess, if y'all will. And since it's doing this, I can't just show all the pictures on the way out, but look at some of these giant mounds here that they show, and looking like a pyramid reaching the sky. This one doesn't look as eroded. There's another one covered with poppies. Ben Tepe Kurgans. Here's one with a cleft running down through it where long ago they had dug off into it. So a lot of those have been ignored. Who knows if they found everything in them. Here's the way some of them look inside of it with this log cabin house, and it's just one room of it, and you can tell it's well hewn, squared off, planked, done nicely. This whole house, that's the burial chamber inside the mound. So they built a log cabin that's inside of there. I wanted to show you this effigy they had of it here at the end, but let's see if we can just get to it and exactly where this is in the world. You can see that giant mound, which would have looked like that one we saw before, but no, it's not there anymore. They've taken a third of the mound's dirt, and it's not just here in front of us, it's way away. Here's another one of those log cabins that's been shored up that you can go in and search through, and you can see it goes through a network of tunnels that lead all around into it here. Here's another one, just a conspicuous hole that's there, but it's surrounded by poppies again. Strange how it's got that association with it, huh? So, where are we? Well, we're in ancient Anatolia. Here's a room. Look how well it's planked. You can't hardly see the seams in there. It's just like stonework, but they were working with wood at this time for perfection and stone. This is in ancient Anatolia. And let's see if it'll go to the picture of it here. It's coming right up. Look at the size of some of these rocks. Poppies. Poppies. Just like the Wizard of Oz for a reason. Here's what one of those tunnels look like. That I tell you goes on forever. How far does it go back there? Oh, it looks like it's more than 100 yards. It's all lined with stone, but then it's got those stone slabs on top of it, and the stone slabs on top of it are just as smooth as your sidewalk is, flipped upside down. Where are we at? 43. I've got to find that picture here pretty soon. Here we go. That's that house that was there. And it showed you that they are actually houses, and there's just cauldrons and everything that are into it. And the first picture looked like a guy getting ready for a barbecue, but this second picture looks like something out of a witch's brew type idea, but no, it's not. They were brewing up all of his foods and all of his things, and he's got all these plates, and if you look how well made all these plates are for the ancient time that it is, and all circle drilled out, and there's that place again. So kind of odd and telling. And I must have gone past the picture then I thought was right there. It showed exactly where we were in the world. But this is ancient Anatolia. and they talk about being hooked up with the Illyrian people and all these other ones, but what we look at here is a monolith that on the left reminds me of something out of 2001 Space Odyssey, and on the right is a huge mounded rock. This place has been dug down for some reason. We're standing on one of those mounds looking off in the distance, and all we can really see when we look in the distance are mounds and mounds and mounds far, far away. Now that's the last picture that's here, so I don't have the actual one. I must have, in the stopping right there, skipped over one of the pictures here that showed actually where we were. But I've gone over 45 now too, guys, so we're gonna have to kill this, but I will put that picture as the one that you'll have to click on. No, because that'll show you where it's at. Can't do that with where are we at, can we? Yeah. So one wonders what loot they've got, and all these pouring dishes, and all of the silverware and things that they found out of it, and what we could glean as information out of it. But I always wonder, well, if these hundreds of them have all been looted, and we rarely find one that's like this, what is it that we never knew, we never will get to know? Like, share, and subscribe, and enjoy. And put your guess down there in the bottom, but don't wait till the end. Aha. Peace.